all, what are you hearing? First of all, what are you hearing? Are you getting any reaction from Russia?
Yeah, actually, I've seen a lot, and it's very predictable. It's like it's a festival. It's a huge celebration. I would quote here the most probably the funniest reply is from Russia's former president Dmitry Medvedev, who is now serving as the vice chairman of the Security Council. He wrote that for the first time, Trump told the cocaine clown the truth to his face. The Kiev regime is playing with World War III, and the ungrateful pig got a firm slap from the masters of the pigsty. This is useful, but not enough. The military aid to the Nazi machine must be stopped. End of the quote, and that's Russia's former president Dmitry Medvedev. So, and that's the tone of Russian reaction. Yeah, they are super happy. They are celebrating, and if I think that's even more than they could have expected. And it's really,
Right.
I would love to maybe to ask you and to ask myself, why do we think it even started? Because in the beginning of that session, it was very calm. Zelensky
Yes.
was showing the terrible pictures of the
Yeah.
prisoners of war, and then Vice President Vance started speaking, and Zelensky decided to ask him a question. What do you think of that?
Well, I think two things. I think one, the role of JD Vance in that performance, because the other thing to keep in mind is that it was a performance. I mean, normally when negotiations like this are worked out, there's a reason they get worked out behind closed doors. So I think the fact that this was done in front of the cameras, whether history will show that that was deliberate or not, I think is a really important question. Second, the role of, I mean, JD Vance, no question, to me, seemed to really amp things up there. And the way I looked at it was the thing that got Trump really riled up was when Zelensky started to sort of tell him how America would start to pay a price if Putin broke his promises. That suddenly then it would become America's problem, and that's when Trump sort of said, "Whoa, don't start telling me how I'm going to feel, and don't start telling me that Putin's going to treat me the same way as he's treated everyone else." That's when the whole thing devolved. But it was JD Vance who really kicked it all off. And I'm wondering, I mean, do we know anything? I mean, we've all talked about Putin's relationship with Trump. Do we know if there's any sort of relationships at all with JD Vance on this, or is he just coming into this sort of philosophically? I mean, we know he hasn't been to Ukraine.
I'm not really sure. I think it's very important that you mentioned that it was much more of a show than the real process of negotiations. And the first thing I started thinking is that actually Zelensky is a showman. That's his job. That's his instinct. When he's in front of the camera, he starts playing. He has participated in live shows most of his life. He knows how to do it, and I guess that he's overreacted. To my mind, and I think that was the greatest mistake of Zelensky, because he decided to ask a question to JD Vance. I think he didn't have to do that, but he could not resist. That was his nature. Yeah, as the professional showman, as the I don't want to call him a comedian, because actually he's more than that. He was the producer who was running the huge company. He was much more of Lord Michael of Saturday Night Live. He owned the company and was acting himself. So he's not a low level comedian, but still he knows how to do it, and probably he could not resist the temptation to just to dive in and to stop JD Vance. And I think that was definitely a mistake for him, because he came with his agenda, and
Yeah.
he was not successful in trying to persuade, and it ended up as that brutal. I don't
No,
know.
I mean, absolutely.
Not even a conversation. Not even an argument. We have never seen presidents shouting at each other.
Right. Well, and also Trump did bring up the notion that, we could potentially be on the brink of World War III. And, right now, Zelensky has left. There is no agreement about rare earth minerals. Not that I'm sure that would have really moved the needle one way or another. And, what happens? I mean, it's not inconceivable that US aid to Ukraine just stops, and then where are we?
Yeah, and at the same time, it seems like the tragedy that actually was, in a way, it was predetermined, because if we for example talked yesterday, I would tell you that any real ceasefire, any real like successful peace negotiations were doomed. It was just impossible from the beginning. But it's funny that Putin from the beginning was playing his role, and he was pretending that he was fine with the idea of the negotiations. But actually, it's absolutely unacceptable for Putin, because he doesn't need to stop this war, and he doesn't want it. So he's okay with negotiations. He can sit at the table as long as he can. And actually, what he was trying to do. What his delegation was trying to do in Riyadh. It was very interesting that they were trying kind of separate American issues and Ukrainian issues. They really want sanctions to be lifted. They really want better relationships with the U.S. And Ukraine is less important, and he doesn't he wants to start conversation about Ukraine, but actually he knows that's a dead
He's
end.
winning. He's winning. So he's not in a hurry, right? Or he's
He's not
not in a big
doing.
hurry to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, I spent the last week talking to a lot of people in Moscow, trying to get their sense of what's happening. And the perception I've got from them is that actually the war is the most convenient mechanism for Vladimir Putin to rule the country, and he will never agree to get rid of this instrument. He needs this war because that mobilizes the country, that keeps everyone down, that prevents him from any kind of dissent in the streets or within his inner circle. When there is a war, he can do anything, and so he doesn't have um, any reason to start really thinking about the war. But he can pretend. He can, that's a very nice game. Like both sides can pretend that they want to stop the war, but actually the only side that uh, stands up first is losing. So actually, what we saw today, Zelensky lost today because he was the first to burst out, and he didn't have to do that. He probably, it was diplomatically wiser to sit quietly and to listen to everything
Yes.
what JD Vance was saying, and to Donald Trump, and just to say yes, 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 okay, yes, okay. And it's very ironic that he did that once with that mineral deal with rare earths.
Right, which
Uh,
which in a way is just a sort of surface. It wouldn't have really. I mean, do you think it would have moved the needle really one way or another? I mean, I thought that it was really. I mean, I went to a meeting at the Council of Foreign Relations earlier this week, and I learned something I didn't know, which was that it was actually Ukraine who came up with that idea last year before Trump won the election, And they suggested, it was a way of keeping Trump in a dialogue with them should he become president. He obviously did, because they understand he's transactional. And I think they understand that, as Trump said, rubbing his nose in it, that he doesn't have the cards. And they needed something. But I think they hoped that Trump would look at a deal like that as a partnership rather than as a one-upmanship.
Yeah, but this deal is a tricky thing. If it's designed around the so-called rare earths, it's funny because then it's really overestimated. Because Ukraine is not the richest country in the world in terms of rare earths. Russia has much more, and the U.S. has much more. But most of the minerals that could be included into the deal are located right in the east of Ukraine, in the territories partially occupied by Russia, or that's the front line. So just
Right.
potentially to start fulfilling this deal, you need to stop the war, and obviously you need to negotiate with Russia, because Russia occupies half of all those territories. So it was from the beginning, it was the easiest thing for Zelensky to say, yes, yeah, okay, I'm fine with it. Go and have it. Have your rare earths. And instead, for the sake of his, that was a very political answer. He started playing the great leader, and like he wants to look like a great leader. He cannot, before his own Ukrainian audience, he cannot be seen as the person who can be humiliated by
Yes.
Donald Trump, and that's why he just he continues, and he does it again and again. He starts arguing with Donald Trump just in vain.
So what do you think? I mean, last time you and I chatted, you said to me that his popularity in Ukraine would skyrocket because the Ukrainians would really be offended by Donald Trump calling him a dictator. Obviously, Trump kind of walked that back yesterday. And so now, how do you think the Ukrainians will feel about this performance today? Will they be with him, or will they feel he let them down?
I have this very strange deja vu, because I think we saw in a scene like this probably only once, 20 years ago, in a movie called Love Actually. Yeah, I think it was Love Actually, when American president, played by Billy Bob Thornton,
That's
and
right.
British Prime Minister, played by Hugh Grant, after the negotiations, they came to the press, and Hugh Grant suddenly started arguing with and saying very unpleasant things right into the face of the American president, and that made him very popular, and he was the obvious winner of that situation. So when the little partner stands up against the big partner, he becomes more popular. Uh, with the situation of the last 2 weeks in Ukraine, Donald Trump is seen as a bully who is unfairly labeled Vladimir Zelensky as dictator, as person with 4% of popularity, which is, for Ukrainians, it's 100% unfair. So I'm sure that Zelensky, by many people, is going to be seen as the hero, because he had guts to stand up in to confront Donald Trump right in the White House. That's probably the first time ever any foreign leader started behaving like this in the Oval Office in front of the American president. So that will give Vladimir Zelensky a lot of fans all over the world. But I'm not sure that these fans is something he really needs, because
Mm.
obviously all those so far anti-Americanists are not going to go and fight on the front line in Ukraine. So, but in Ukraine, definitely, and as we predicted it last week or 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
last week, uh, yeah, his popularity, his approval ratings are great. If only there would be any electoral campaign, although I'm sure it's impossible. It's just impossible. But he is winning anyway so far.
So do you think, I mean, you've interviewed him. Do you think he has the ability to now come back? I mean, Trump has said he can come back when he's ready for peace, whatever that means. How, I mean, we know that he's a very brave wartime leader. We know that he's, other than, today, that he's very strong. He's a very strong media presence. How good is he at quote unquote diplomacy?
I think that's the hardest question, because yeah, that's obviously a deadlock. I don't see him coming back on his knees apologizing,
Mm.
because he's the hostage of his role. In my book, which was published 2 years ago, War and Punishment. It's mostly about Russian history and Ukrainian history, how Russia was perceiving Ukraine. But I also write the story of Zelensky and how he was developing his political character. And actually, he is influenced by his previous roles as an actor a lot. And for example, like, I think it was 30 years ago, he played Napoleon in a very cheap comedy. And it was not a heroic Napoleon. It was very miserable, disgusting Napoleon. Who was losing to Russians and who was humiliated by Russians. And so it was very, and he lost the war actually. So
Mm.
I think that image uh, affected Zelensky quite a lot. He knows what it means to be a hero. He knows what it means to be a superhero. And he has been there. He has become the superhero back in 2022, and so he just cannot. There are certain things he just cannot afford doing. He cannot beg for anyone's pardon. He cannot even start thinking of being humiliated in front of the cameras, because in the end his legacy, or part of his legacy, is the way how he's seen by Ukrainians and by the international community. So he needs to remain the superhero in their eyes. It's really hard for me to start thinking how any reconciliation could be possible, because we know that Donald Trump is also is not the person to start to relaunch that
Mm.
conversation. So there should be a very powerful, I don't know, Henry Kissinger style mediator, but it's going to be very easy for Russians to jump in to continue that that part of dialogue. So I think that the
Well, tell me about that. So what do you think? So how do you think Putin games this out? You and I talked about the fact that the Russian Jared Kushner, who we talked about last time, Kirill Dmitriev, has already been on X. He's put out the video of what happened in the Oval Office. I think with the one word, right, saying
history,
historic.
historic,
Yeah, yeah. So how do they game this out? What do they do?
It was really, I was watching very carefully at everything that was happening in Moscow, in Russian media, in Russian propaganda, and it's remarkable that everyone is so happy that Russian propaganda that spent years and spent billions on cursing Americans, on creating a lot of conspiracy theories about Americans, and blaming Americans for everything. But now, actually, they are super happy. Trump is the most popular personality in Russia. The newborn babies are called now Trump.
No.
Um, Yes, yeah. There were a couple of news about like at least two kids who were born somewhere in Siberia, and parents were so happy and called them Trump. Uh,
Trump is their first name.
is the first name? Yeah, not Donald, but Trump, the first name. Yeah.
Wow.
It's okay. You know, Russia is not a religious country. You can call your kid
Yeah.
in any way. He doesn't have to be baptized as Trump. Uh, but yeah, it's amazing how everyone is happy, which partially each which is an indicator how really tired people are. So a lot of people really want this war to be over, including those working for propaganda, including those who are, including a lot of people most people in Putin's inner circle. Uh, the result of the last round of my conversations with my sources from Moscow is amazing, because I was reassured once again that like 99% people of everyone, of even people in the army, of army generals, they want this war to be over, and they see it as the nice chance to persuade Vladimir Putin. But actually, the only problem is that everyone knows that the only person who doesn't want the end of the war is Putin. So
Right.
that's the only obstacle. So but he's willing to play. He's willing to play this game till the end. He doesn't need to, and he will never say no, because he knows that you know. Uh, he knows that it's impossible to walk this path and till the end. And if there is the light in the end of the tunnel, it's unreachable, because just it's impossible to. But you can pretend that you are walking, and it's fine. And I think he will try to reach some business goals, or some he definitely he's going to he needs to take some to have some money back. He needs sanctions to be lifted. He needs
Right.
Russian assets to be frozen. I think he can sign the rare earth deal with Trump, and he will be happy to do that. He's definitely not ready to give his oligarchs permission to go and to get that $5 million citizenship from Donald Trump, because yeah, he wants all his billionaires to be at home and to be very loyal, and he
Right.
won't let them out. But he's fine with Americans coming, with American money.
Right.
Amazing,
And
amazing result.
obviously the other thing that's happening that's played right into his hands is the seemingly rapid disintegration of the transatlantic alliance between, the US and Europe. I mean, despite all the best efforts of Macron and then Keir Starmer, I mean, the fact that this happened in the wake of all of that is really, really telling. And presumably, I mean, I think you were saying last week that that's kind of what Putin wants, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing how now we're coming to the first question you asked: why and who decided to broadcast this conversation live from the beginning? Because before that, there were negotiations between Trump and Macron, Trump and Starmer, and definitely they were trying to push him. They were trying
Yeah.
to convince him to be more tolerant to Zelensky. They were telling him stories that it's important to be united, to be unified, to support Ukraine, and to resist Putin. And he was saying yes, definitely. And now just one conversation, just 10 minutes of TV show, cancel all of that. It's yeah, that's amazing. That, but we definitely in the new era of global policy, when two showmen reset the geopolitics. I mean,
It's really, yeah.
apprentice and servant of the people. Uh,
It's absolutely extraordinary. Mikhail, before I let you go, any other sort of thoughts on this? I mean, obviously, it was. Yes, you're right. It was a performance. It was by people who know how to give a performance and understand the value of performance. But it was also, right, completely historic. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. And I suspect that we'll be breaking down the importance of what happened here for years, if not decades. But anything just that springs to mind of you as a sort of Russian historian about what we saw today?
As a historian, I mentioned Henry Kissinger only because he is a really a revered figure for Kremlin, and they have always. I've heard that so many times, many years ago, and they were repeating this mantra for many years that any Republican administration is very good for Russia because they are pragmatic and they are not. They call it religious, meaning that religion is liberal democracy. People in Kremlin call democratic administrations to be too religious, too persistent in imposing democratic values and human rights, and that's annoying. And Republicans are not annoying; they are people to deal with. They are much more approachable. They are much more pragmatic. So, and that's actually they were expecting it. They were in a way prepared for more constructive conversation. What they call constructive conversation. Mm-hmm. So yes, they are. That's exactly what they wanted, and they were. They always compare themselves to the Soviet Union, and they always say that okay, it was possible to negotiate even during the Cold War, even when there was the real conflict between two superpowers. But still, Brezhnev was coming to the U.S., Nixon was coming to Moscow. They were they seemed to be friends. They were jet skiing together, drinking champagne together, and it was okay. It was detente. So that's exactly what they want. They don't want the Cold War to stop. They want detente for the Trump's presidential term. So, and it reminds a lot, like it reminds them the best years of their lives because Putin and his buddies, or for example, Sergei Chemezov, that's the person who is the most influential, the second most influential person in Russia now. He is the military industry czar. He's the head of the state-owned corporation that produces all the weaponry. He was Putin's colleague and best friend back in Dresden when both of them were working for KGB in East Germany, and they shared a car. They were very minor officers in the Soviet mission, so each of them could not have a car, so they had one car for two. And they used it one day after another. So that closest person to Putin is now producing the arms. But definitely the 70s were the best for them. They were young. They were young. They were energetic. They had the unique privilege to have some foreign goods, although the most of the country didn't have that. They could find, Marlboro, American cigarettes, American alcohol, Western gins. They were really privileged, but it was okay for them that there is a Cold War. It's okay that the country is closed, but they can enjoy it. they really want that glamorous Cold War to be back.
To be back. Thank you, Mikhail. I will say this. I would be, if Henry Kissinger were alive and witnessed what happened today in the Oval Office, I wonder what on earth he would think.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to say thank you. And
Thank you.
we'll continue this, I really hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.